everyone. So glad to be here with you. Today, we are talking about one of my favorite topics. Our minds can be assholes. Ladies, is this true for you? Have you?
100%. Oh my
Yes.
God, every day.
Amen.
Mhm.
Every day, our minds are assholes. Um, so when we say our minds are assholes, what are we talking about? We're talking about that sabotage, right? That we want to do something or we want to show up in a certain way. And our minds are like, you're not that person. Who do you think you are? Why do you think you can do that? Why are you going to rise above whatever? It does. It happens to us all day long. In a minute, I'm gonna let get Beth come in because she's so good at the psychological triad, the emotional triad, and I want to bring that into this picture. So I'm hoping you'll talk a little bit about that. But when it comes to our minds being assholes, that sabotage term is what comes to my mind. So I want to share really through my whole career, my mind has been an asshole to me. So I started out as a respiratory therapist. I got my bachelor's degree in respiratory therapy. I got certifications. I rose up the ranks of respiratory therapy. I became a manager of the department. And then I went a different route. I did organizational development. I went into IT and I was a director of implementing electronic health records and bigger positions in that space. And then I went into project management and I became a leader in the entire organization for operational excellence and an executive in that space. But throughout all of those wonderful experiences and promotions and being asked to move to these different places or even being voluntold, um, my mind would say to me, you can't run an electronic health record implementation for a 7 hospital system. You're just a respiratory therapist. My whole career, that I would say that to myself, my mind would come up and say, what? You're going to do operational excellence? You're going to be the planning chief for COVID? You're a respiratory therapist. What are you doing? That's sabotage, right? And then when I started my new business, more assholes in my mind showed up, right? So it impacted just that. Who do you think you are being the CEO of your own company? What do you think you can put a blog out? You think you can do marketing on social media? What will people think of you? What will people think of you? And I let that one statement, what will people think of you? For the first, I don't know, for the first 6 to 9 months drive what I posted, how I marketed, how I wrote my blogs, how I showed up. Because in my mind, I was thinking about what are people going to think about me? Like, who does she think she is? And why does she think she can talk about that? And it really did take me quite a lot of hard work. And it's so similar to a previous episode that we did around managing our minds. Beth, you ran that one. But there's a lot of similarities there because our minds are assholes and they will. And I know from a psychological perspective, our minds, they're not assholes. They're trying to protect us. They don't like us to take risks. They like us to stay in our safe spot. But when they say things like, you're just a respiratory therapist, what are you doing? Like, that's asshole. So here's some strategies that I have developed because I I have intentions and I have ambitions and I have goals and I have ways that I want to show up. And I don't want this asshole in my mind to keep giving me doubt or giving me trepidation or stopping me in my tracks, right? So the first thing is turning shame into acceptance. So when I started my business, who do you think you are? What are people going to think of you? What are they going to say about you? That's the shame coming out. And how we turn shame into acceptance. We've talked about thought downloads. talked about self-coaching, and I really believe that those two things, being able to do an effective thought download and turn those negative thoughts around, as well as those self-coaching. How do I want to show up? What's the worst that could happen? Why do I even care what people are going to say? So what? So what? They're going to say what they're going to say. So that's one. Really giving myself grace, the grace to try and fail, try new things, do it even though my brain tells me not to do that, kind of that courage. Grace and courage for me go hand in hand. Rest, and that seems like a weird one, but when I work hard day after day after day without giving my brain a chance to rest and my body a chance to rest, it becomes harder for me to ignore the asshole in my mind or to turn around the asshole in my mind. So I have found that rest really does make a difference on how my ability to give myself grace and my ability to be courageous, how that shows up. So I would love to hear from all of you, because I know you all have assholes in your mind as well. And how has that asshole showed up? And what have you done? What are your techniques for overcoming or rising above that? Go ahead, Nancy.
I can go first. For me, I like to make friends with the asshole. I like to give the asshole part of my mind a name. For me, it's Lizzie from the amygdala, coming from the lizard brain, because I know that's part of my brain that's just trying to protect me. So I'll say, okay, Lizzie, what do you need? So a lot of times it just needs some reassurance, because again, it's trying to protect us. It wants to keep us safe. It doesn't want us to expend a lot of energy or effort. So I talk to her. And then a lot of times, when you get questions come up like, you can't do that, or who are you to do that? I'll answer that question back, because your mind typically has one sentence and it can't answer it. So I'll say, when it comes up like you're not good enough, I'll say, well, not good enough for what? And there's no answer, it's silence. So those help me. They're pretty simple to use, and they've really helped me a lot.
I love that so much. I love that you named her Lizzie. I love that you talk to her. I love that you give her space.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is brilliant. I really do love that. I think we all need to start talking to our Lizzies.
I've been trying to more often now identify that, asshole part of me. And sometimes I look at that part of me when I notice those thoughts come in. And for me, I love humor. I love to laugh. I like to be entertained. And so because that's a part of you, and living in shame, like you had mentioned, Elise, like having those negative thoughts or having that, that asshole part of your brain just be super loud. Sometimes I know for me, I would be ashamed. Like, I can't believe I'm thinking that. I can't believe I thought that, and some of the things I would think would be super alarming. Like, how could any sane, rational person think that, And so instead of making it a shameful thing, I would make it a comical thing. Like, girl, you're crazy. Or, oh my God, that is so funny that you think that. I bet you a lot more people than you know are think the same exact thing. They're just not saying it out loud. It's okay to think that, but you know what? That's not what we're going for today. This is what we're going to do today instead. And so that's what's helped me in a lot of situations where I would shame myself, or, that asshole part of me that would think like, instead of shaming myself or feeling bad for thinking something negative about someone else or about myself, making it a comical thing, because really a lot of the things that our brain throws at us is just made up stuff. is something that you just made up, some random thought, and it's not necessarily, it's not reality a lot of times, some of the things that we're thinking. And so it's an optional thought. You don't have to believe it. You don't. It took me a long time to realize that you don't have to believe that asshole negative sabotaging part of yourself. And so living in shame for thinking something that's not even true is a big waste of time. And so for me, laughing at it or, kind of making it in a lighter light has really helped me overcome a lot of those negative self-sabotaging, sometimes even alarming ways of thinking about myself or about others. So that's helped me. It's kind of like, what? I can't believe you just said that. That's crazy. We're going to move on.
You know what's fun about that, Gabby, is it's like your courage is snuffing out your asshole brain, right? Or your self-confidence, maybe that's a better word. Your self-confidence is saying, what are you talking about? So I love that so much because you have to bring that self-confidence to the table and make it bigger than what your mind is saying.
Right. And
I
then,
love it.
it's impossible. You're going to have the good and the bad. You're going to have that, I call the angel or the innocent, kind of thinking, or the positive thinking and the negative thinking. That's all part of our human existence, the negative and the positive. And the negative doesn't always have to be a bad thing. Sometimes that is something that can motivate you. Sometimes that can be something that can inspire you to either think better, do better. So I have over time coached myself into not being so ashamed, afraid, or terrified of that asshole part, and kind of made that part of me like that, almost sometimes like a badass. I'm watching out for you. This could possibly happen, so you better watch out. And be like, well, thank you for thinking that, but things are going to be okay.
Noted.
Love that. And it is important, I think, to remember that our minds can sometimes be trying to protect us. I mean, they're never trying to sabotage us. They always, but sometimes they are. And so I like that you can pause and think about that too. I think Nancy, you had a comment.
Oh, I was thinking like, I don't know, who's it? Carl Jung talked about having this collective consciousness where it's like we're all kind of tapped in. It's almost like the human mind internet. And if I come up with a crazy weird thought, I always say, "Ooh, I'm probably bumping into somebody else's thought." So
I like
I don't know
that.
if that's true or
Yeah.
not, but it works for me.
Yeah. Interesting. I wanted to share what has helped me is understanding our brains better. And so if you have a human brain, you are wired to focus on the negative. And the reason that is that is how we evolved and adapted. We had to constantly scan our environment for threat, right? The saber-toothed tiger, things like that. And so that part of our brain, which I like to call the primitive or the primal part, is still wired that way. And like Elise said, it's trying to protect you. It's trying to serve you. It doesn't know that things are not really a threat to your survival any longer, but it feels like it's a threat. And that's where self-sabotage comes in, because it wants you to stay the same. Because if you change, that could be a threat to your very survival. And so, I think self-sabotage comes in to help protect you. And it's interesting. I love, Nancy, how you have named your part of that brain to talk to it. And I think there's also some different psychology out there, shadow work and things like that, to kind of reparent that part of our brain and like kind of talk to it and soothe it to know that what's happening and the change that you're trying to make, like Elise starting your business and putting yourself out there. Your brain is fearing, and it's fearing to be judged. And because back in the day, if you were judged and basically shunned from your tribe, that was a potential, like you could die. You would die if you're not part of the tribe. And so there's still that part of your brain in all of us. And for me, just realizing that that's normal and to not beat myself up for being normal. And to me, that has helped me the most. And Nancy, for you, I also have named I have a part of my brain too that I have named. It's my addict brain. I am a recovering addict and of many things. But when the addict brain comes in, he's pesky Pete, and he just trying to talk me into, having the drink or eating the sugar or drinking the cup of coffee, smoking the cigarette, whatever the thing was at the time, to be able to identify it and speak to it as a separate entity was very helpful and brought a lot of the shame around my addictions, at least more to, like Elise was sharing, the acceptance, like it's okay, I'm normal. There are other people that experience this as well.
Right. And then we can also, another way of looking at it is like just that primitive brain. And then I say, then you have like your mom, I call it the mom brain, your executive functioning brain, right? The orderly, rule following, planning, more rational side. So we have these primitive survival instincts that happen, and all these thoughts, will arise from the emotional kind of, stimulus that we get. And we don't always have to listen or react to that. And I think the example I was trying to give before, and I just remembered, and I always use my husband as an example. I don't know why. He always tends to be the person who triggers a lot of like primitive emotions for me. So I'll give you the example of him like chewing loudly. And I don't know why that'll trigger like oh my God, that's like an irritating or kind of like negative type of response for me. And I literally want to punch him in the face. That is the asshole part of me. Like, oh my God, that is so annoying. You've told him 1,000,001 times to chew quietly. He never does it. Just punch him. Maybe he'll learn this time. That's the a-hole part, right? But the executive functioning part is like, don't be ridiculous. Just let him eat. He's just eating. That's all he's doing. If he doesn't eat, he's going to die. He's not doing it on purpose to, annoy you. He's not doing it on purpose to disrespectful. But it's kind of like that little kind of like biatch that comes out. But the executive functioning part of us, the rational thinking brain, is there to kind of help sort things out for you. But if we live very impulsively and always listening to that primitive type of, voice, we can definitely get us in a lot of trouble.
Living in default mode is what I call that. Like,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
And it can be very annoying when people chew loudly, Gabby.
Yeah.
I know I do it too. So, but it's just not annoying when I do it.
And we need to say that your husband is wonderful in a million different ways.
He is the perfect husband for me. But he still brings out the asshole in me. I don't know why.
But I love how you've trained yourself to think differently about it. I had to do that, and my husband is the most wonderful husband in the world too. I will tell you, he's the driver when we go someplace, he drives. And he and I have very different ideas about directions and how to get to places. And most of the time I sit in the chair and I'm like, why are you going this way? You're backtracking. It's so inefficient if you just went the way I want to go. And I used to try and tell him what directions to go. And I really had to stop myself and be like, are we really in a hurry? Does it really matter which way we go? Does it really matter if you turn left and then right or right and then left? Like, and I coach myself every time we get in the car about it doesn't matter which way we get there as long as we get there. And I'm grateful that he's driving and I don't have to drive. But you really do, you train yourself to like quell the asshole because the asshole rises every time I get in the passenger seat. And I just like the asshole rises in you every time you hear that chewing and you just have to tamper it. Yeah, I love that.
And it makes life so much more peaceful.
Peaceful,
And it
yes.
makes things just so much better. And then it doesn't snowball into like an argument. Like, why are you so chewing so loud? Like, what's the big deal? I'm just eating. You never do what I ask you to do. And then it could just snowball into an argument about nothing.
Yes, yes.
Why?
Well, and I just wanted to share too, like how our experience of life is shaped by what we're thinking. And, you know, the same person, Gabby, or you, I don't know how long you've been married, but we'll just say 20 some years ago.
26 years, yes.
Oh, congratulations. 26 years ago, when you first met your husband or future husband, if he was chewing loudly, you may have thought, oh, that's so cute. That's so sweet. Or,
He didn't used to chew loudly before.
Listen to her. I never would have married him if he was chewing loudly.
No, that would have been a deal breaker for sure.
I'm just sharing the experience of how you can have the same identical situation and two different experiences within that situation.
I'm sure there's a woman out there who that's her biggest turn on. Chew louder, chew louder.
Oh my gosh. All right. So ladies, I'm going to ask you if you were going to coach someone or give someone advice on how to start dealing with that asshole in our mind. What is one or two tricks or tools that you have in your toolkit for them?
I would simply ask the question, am I being an asshole right now? To get some awareness of it. If it's giving you some kind of feeling, the thought, the emotion, the action, something that you're feeling negatively about, just asking yourself, is my mind being an asshole right now or not? And kind of go through it, because not every negative thought or feeling or sensation is is necessarily something that that is not useful or helpful. Let's put it that way. There are definitely plenty of negative thoughts that are not helpful, but maybe it's not being an asshole in the moment. Maybe it's being helpful. Maybe it is bringing something up that you need to have caution moving forward. Maybe it is a boundary that is being crossed that needs to be identified or addressed. So just ask yourself, is my mind really being an asshole right now?
I love that. I love that question. And my one tool that I would encourage people to practice with is also asking a question of, why am I feeling this way right now? Right. And what am I believing about this situation? And is it true? Just asking yourself questions like, am I being an asshole? Like, why am I feeling this way?
Right. And I like your question because it's really open to, lots of different answers.
Nancy.
And not make yourself wrong. Sorry, I just wanted to add, like, whatever comes out of your brain, don't make it wrong and don't judge yourself and don't like beat yourself up over it.
Yeah.
We all have negative thoughts. We have to have negative thoughts. It's a normal part of living. So
I like being friends with that part of my mind, understanding it, spending time with it. What I like to do is ask it, what does it need? What do you need right now? What do you need from me? Because a lot of times it's just reassurance, it's protective. So I try to make friends with it and ask it, Sweetheart, what do you need right now? What would make you feel comfortable? What can I do for you in this moment because you're protecting me?
I love that. It's so kind and gentle.
Mhm.
I really do love
I
that.
love how you called yourself sweetheart too.
She always calls herself sweetheart. I love that so much. I aspire to that. I took a few notes because I think today we just uncovered so many powerful ways to help us. So I'm going to read them back to you. So the first one is talk to that part of your mind, whether it's Lizzie or Pesky P or whatever name you give that part. Talk to it, make friends with it, as Nancy says. Call it sweetheart. But talk to it and have that internal dialogue. Turn your shame into acceptance. That what your brain isn't doing is it's not trying to shame you, although it feels like shame, it's trying to protect you, that primitive brain. Getting back to really being restful so that your grace and your courage and your self-confidence can shine through. Asking those self-coaching questions. How do I want to show up? What's the worst that could happen? So what if I fail? So what if the thing that the asshole in my mind said would happen? So what? Gabby's comment about learning how to laugh at your brain. You don't have to believe it. What are you thinking? And kind of taking a humor approach to it. And also understanding your mom brain versus your primitive brain. I really loved that because the mom brain is the take charge, the executive functioning, and that one can really override that primitive brain. And then Beth, just remembering that it's normal, right? That this is a normal function of our brain to question, to try and help us avoid threats and risks for our own safety. I just really loved all the points that you brought out today. And I really hope that that helps our listeners with their assholes in their brains and helping them to have that dialogue. So I hope everyone has a great day and we will see you soon.
Hey, one more thing before we leave. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are certified professional coaches, but this broadcast is not a substitute for medical or psychological advice. Okay, thanks for listening. See you next week.